Emma Mercer, could you please move away from the lunch table? My daughter Ellen said it softly, but not soft enough. Three Tia mothers heard her. So did the man counting raffle tickets by the milk cooler. So did my granddaughter Lily, who was standing by the paper napkins with a stack of cupcake boxes in her arms. The cafeteria was full that Saturday morning. Folding tables ran from the serving window to the trophy case. Somebody had taped a bright sign to the wall that said Spring Fundraiser in blue marker. Parents were selling cookies, collecting raffle money, and pretending not to look at me. I stood beside the old cafeteria table, same place I had stood for years when I worked here as the janitor. Not in the way, not touching the food, just near enough to keep an eye on the small glass jar by the cash box. The jar had a faded blue ribbon tied around its neck. Inside were wooden tokens, worn smooth from years of fingers dropping them in and taking them out. The tape on the front had yellowed, but the word was still readable. Tokens. Paula Greer leaned close to Ellen and said, "He's always hovering around the lunchroom. It makes people uncomfortable." She did not whisper as quietly as she thought. Ellen's face tightened. She looked at me, then at the other parents, then back at me again. "Dad," she said, "you don't need to stand right here." "I'm not bothering anything," I said. "I know, but this is a pita table today." That one landed harder than she meant it to. I had stripped wax off this cafeteria floor before Ellen was old enough to spell cafeteria. I had fixed table legs, cleared clogged drains, carried sick kids' backpacks to the office, and locked these doors long after the last bus pulled away. But I only nodded. Paula reached around me to straighten a stack of flyers. "We're trying to make this look organized." Ellen picked up the token jar like it was an old coffee can from my garage. "This probably doesn't even need to be out," she said, forcing a little laugh. "It's just one of Dad's old lunchroom things." I took one step forward. "Ellen." She did not look at me. She turned toward the pita cash box, the jar tilted in her hand, the tokens sliding softly against the glass. Then Marlene Ortiz came through the kitchen door and put her hand over the top of the jar. "That jar doesn't belong to the Pietà." Marlene did not raise her voice. That made the whole cafeteria quieter. Her palm stayed flat over the mouth of the jar, steady as a lid. Ellen froze with one hand still wrapped around the glass and the other hovering near the Pietà cash box. "I'm sorry," Ellen said, her cheeks turning red. "I thought it was just old cafeteria clutter." Paula Greer gave a little laugh through her nose. "Well, that's what it looks like." Marlene turned her head just enough to look at Paula, not sharp, not rude, just enough. "It isn't," she said. The wooden tokens inside the jar shifted when Ellen loosened her grip. I heard that small dry sound they made against the glass, and I hated that I noticed it. I hated that Lily noticed me noticing it. "Dad?" Ellen said, softer now. I looked at the jar, not at her. "Let Marlene handle it." That was all I trusted myself to say. Around us, the fundraiser kept pretending to be normal. A woman taped another sign to the dessert table. Somebody called for more raffle tickets. The TI cash box sat open with neat stacks of 1s and 5s inside. Everything on that table had a price tag, a label, a purpose everybody understood, except the jar. Ellen tried again. "Marlene, I didn't mean anything by it. We're just trying to keep the table organized." "I understand," Marlene said, "but cafeteria items don't get moved into TIA money." Paula folded her arms. "It's a fundraiser. Everything on this table is part of the fundraiser." "No," Marlene said, "not everything." She lifted the jar with both hands, careful, like it was heavier than glass and wood had any right to be. She did not explain. She did not invite questions. She did not embarrass anyone, including me. That was Marlene's way. She could stop a lunch line backup, calm a parent, and correct a mistake without turning it into a show. Ellen stepped aside as Marlene carried the jar past her. I stayed where I was. For a second, Lily moved like she wanted to follow, but Ellen touched her shoulder. Paula watched Marlene walk toward the small cafeteria office beside the serving window. The door was half open. Inside were a metal desk, a corkboard, and a gray drawer cabinet I had repaired twice before I retired. Marlene set the jar inside the bottom drawer. Then she pulled a key from her apron pocket and locked it away. The fundraiser noise came back slowly, like somebody had turned the room down and then changed their mind. People started talking again. Coins dropped into the pitaya cash box. A tray of brownies slid across the table, but Ellen kept looking toward the cafeteria office. Paula Greer leaned close to her. I wouldn't worry about it. Some people just get attached to old routines. Ellen did not answer. That was the first good sign. My daughter had a way of filling silence when she felt embarrassed. This time, she let it sit there between us. Marlene came back through the office door and said, Ellen, may I see you for a moment? Ellen glanced at me. I did not move toward them, but I did not walk away either. I stayed beside the serving window where I could see the corner of Marlene's desk through the half-open door. Lily stepped closer to me with her cupcake boxes still in her hands. Grandpa, are you in trouble? No, honey, I said. Not that kind. Inside the office, Marlene unlocked the bottom drawer. She did not take the jar out. Instead, she pulled a small black notebook from beside it, the kind with cardboard covers and bent silver corners. Ellen frowned. What is that? A cafeteria log, Marlene said. Not a PTA record. I saw Ellen's shoulders shift. She was still trying to stand like the organizer of the fundraiser, but confusion had started to soften the hard line in her back. Marlene opened the notebook only halfway and turned it so Ellen could see. Dates, lunch periods, token counts. That's all I'm showing you out here. Ellen bent over the page. These go back years. Yes. But why would that jar still be active? Ellen asked. I thought it was from when Dad worked here. Marlene looked past her for just a second, toward me. Some things keep working after people retire. I looked down at my hands. There was a brown mark near my thumb from the old serving cart I had helped move that morning. I rubbed it once and stopped. Ellen turned another page with the careful touch of somebody handling something she had already insulted. The paper made a soft scraping sound under her finger. Then she stopped. What are these initials? She asked. Marlene's hand came down gently on the notebook before Ellen could turn the page again. From the doorway, I could see exactly what Ellen had seen. M.M. written beside several old fundraiser dates. Marlene closed the notebook. Marlene did not reopen the black notebook. She slid it back into the drawer beside the locked jar, then reached for a clipboard hanging from a nail near the office door. The clipboard had a bent corner and a stack of pale yellow sheets clipped under a cafeteria pencil. Ellen wiped one hand against her jeans. Marlene, if Dad's initials are in that log, I need to know why. You need to know one thing at a time, Marlene said. That was the kindest way anyone had corrected Ellen all morning. From where I stood outside the office, I could hear Paula Greer laughing too loudly near the brownie table. She wanted the room to know nothing unusual had happened, but her eyes kept cutting back toward us. Lily leaned against my side. Grandpa, why won't you just tell Mom? I looked at the cafeteria floor. There was a scuff mark near the serving window I had never managed to buff out. Because some stories aren't only mine, I said. Inside the office, Marlene flipped through the yellow sheets. Here, she said. Volunteer sign-in, fundraiser days, cafeteria support. Ellen took the clipboard. Her face changed before she said a word. That's Dad's name. Yes! Today? And last fall, Marlene said. And the spring before that. Ellen looked toward the open door then, and our eyes met for half a second. I did not smile. I did not nod. I just let her see that I had heard. She looked back down. But Paula said he was hanging around. Paula doesn't manage cafeteria volunteers, Marlene said. There was no bite in her voice, but the words landed clean. Ellen ran her finger down the sheet. Lunchroom support, table reset, trash patrol, spill watch. All normal volunteer tasks, Marlene said. All approved. I could see Ellen swallow. She had asked me to step away from a table I was signed in to help with. The fundraiser kept moving around us. The raffle man called out for change. Somebody asked where the extra cups were. A chair scraped hard against the floor, and I almost stepped forward out of habit. Then I stopped myself. Ellen turned another page on the clipboard. My name was there again, and again. Martin Mercer. Cafeteria support. She kept turning until she reached the top sheet from that morning, where my signature sat on the first line, right above the shift she had just tried to remove me from. Ellen held the volunteer sheet like it had gotten heavier in her hands. Marlene took it back gently and hung the clipboard on the nail. Then she reached into the side pocket of her apron and pulled out a narrow card, laminated at the edges, with blue lines drawn across it. "What's that?" Ellen asked. "A tally card," Marlene said. I looked away from the office door. Not because I was ashamed, because I knew what was on that card, and I knew what was not on it. Ellen stepped closer to Marlene's desk. "Tally for what?" "Tokens used," Marlene said. "By lunch period, by count, not by name." Ellen's eyes moved across the card. "There are no student names here." "No," Marlene said. "There never should be." That sentence settled over the small office harder than any accusation Paula Greer had made. Even Ellen seemed to understand that Marlene was not just being careful. She was protecting something. Out in the cafeteria, Paula called, "Ellen? We still need someone at the ticket table." Ellen did not answer her. Marlene tapped the corner of the card. Sometimes a form is late. Sometimes a payment doesn't post before lunch. Sometimes a small balance catches a family on the wrong morning. Ellen stared at the blue lines. "So the tokens cover that?" "They smooth the line," Marlene said. "That's all I'm going to say in an open room." I heard Lily breathe out beside me. I put a hand lightly on her shoulder, not to hold her back, just to remind her she was still a child and this was grown-up weight. Ellen lowered her voice. "Were kids being pointed out?" Marlene's face changed then, just a little. "Not if I could help it." That was the micro-truth Ellen had not expected. Not a dramatic thing. Not a story for gossip. Just a small system built to keep a small moment from becoming a memory that followed somebody home. Ellen looked through the office doorway at me. I kept my hands folded in front of me. There were 100 things I could have said, but none of them belonged in front of the PTA table. "So Dad knew about this?" she asked. Marlene slid the tally card back into her apron pocket. "Your father knew how to stand close without making anyone feel watched." Ellen's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time that morning, she looked less embarrassed by me than embarrassed for what she had assumed. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. "If the jar was still being used," she said, "who kept it filled?" Marlene did not answer. She only looked toward the locked cafeteria drawer. Marlene did not move fast. She crossed to the gray drawer cabinet, the same one I had fixed years ago when the bottom track kept sticking. Her key turned once, and the little metal click sounded louder than the fundraiser outside. Ellen stood in the office doorway now, not quite inside, not quite out. "Marlene," I said. She looked back at me. "I'm not giving names, Marty. I know. And I'm not opening accounts." "I know that too." Ellen's face tightened at the word accounts, like she had just realized there was a line here she had not even known existed. Marlene pulled the bottom drawer open only halfway. Inside was the jar, the black notebook, and a plain white envelope with blue ink across the front. Blue tokens. Ellen stared at it. "What is that?" Marlene picked it up carefully. The cafeteria drawer envelope. Paula's voice floated from the fundraiser table. "Ellen, we're short on change." Ellen did not turn around this time. Marlene opened the envelope and slid out 3 folded slips. She chose one from the top and handed it to Ellen. I knew the paper before Ellen unfolded it. I knew the corner where I had creased it with my thumb. I knew the way my handwriting leaned when I wrote standing at the edge of Marlene's desk. Ellen read silently. Then her eyes lifted to me. "It's your handwriting," she said. I nodded once. She looked down again. "It says, for the blue tokens, Marlene only." "That's how it was supposed to work," Marlene said. Ellen stepped fully into the office. "So Dad was putting money in?" "He was refilling the jar through me," Marlene said. "Not through student records, not through lunch accounts, not by choosing children that mattered." I watched Ellen hear it. Her shoulders dropped, just a little, as if one bad thought had left her body. "He never knew who used them?" she asked. "No," Marlene said, "and he never asked." Ellen looked at me like I had become both smaller and larger in the same moment. "I didn't need to know," I said. "That was the point." Marlene slid the slips back into the envelope, but Ellen kept staring at the blue writing on the front. Outside, the fundraiser kept running without her. Cups rattled. Chairs scraped. Somebody laughed too loudly near the raffle table. Inside the office, Ellen touched the edge of the envelope with one finger. "If this was all approved," she said quietly, "why did you hide it from me?" Ellen's question stayed in the office doorway. "Why did you hide it from me?" I looked at her, then at the envelope in Marlene's hand. "I didn't hide it," I said. "I left it where it belonged." Ellen did not like that answer. I could see it in her face. She wanted a clean reason, something she could put beside the mistake she had just made and understand it all at once. Marlene saved both of us from saying too much. "There are receipts," she said. Ellen turned toward her. "Receipts?" Marlene pulled a rubber-banded stack from the back of the drawer. Not a thick stack, just folded slips, small donation forms, and a few cafeteria deposit notes clipped together with a blue paper clip. "These show where refills came from," Marlene said. "Small amounts, approved donations, leftover fundraiser change when it was designated for cafeteria use. Nothing mixed into PDA cash without approval." Ellen took the stack slowly, like she was afraid the paper might accuse her. The first receipt was for $12.40. The second was from a fall bake sale, marked cafeteria support. The third had Marlene's initials beside Paul Hanley's. Ellen looked up. "Mr. Hanley knew?" "He allowed the buffer," Marlene said. "I managed it." That was all she said. And it was enough. No drama, no big announcement, just the boundary that mattered. Paula appeared near the doorway with a roll of raffle tickets in her hand. "Ellen, seriously, we need you out here." Ellen did not turn around. "Give me 1 minute." Paula looked at the receipts, then at me. Her expression shifted from impatience to suspicion, then settled into discomfort. Marlene stepped between Paula and the open drawer. "This is cafeteria business." Paula backed away, but not before Ellen saw how quickly private things could become public if the wrong person got curious. Ellen flipped another receipt over. This one was not from a fundraiser. It was a narrow hardware store slip, stapled to a school maintenance note. On the top, in my handwriting, was a short line: "Repaired loose serving cart wheel." Ellen's thumb paused over the total. "Dad," she said, "you fixed that cart?" I glanced toward the serving line, where the old cart sat beside the milk cooler. "It was wobbling. You weren't even working here anymore." "No," I said. "But it was still wobbling." Ellen looked back down. At the bottom of the receipt, on the memo line, 2 words were written in blue ink: "Blue tokens." Ellen stared at the words on the receipt until the blue ink seemed to embarrass her more than Paula ever could. Blue tokens. Marlene took the receipt back and placed it with the others. "There's something else you should understand before you ask your father another question in the wrong room." Ellen looked up. "The wrong room?" Marlene nodded toward the cafeteria, where the fundraiser crowd kept moving around, folding tables and poster board signs. "Any room with an audience that landed." I saw Ellen glance toward Paula, who was pretending to organize raffle tickets while watching the office door from the corner of her eye. Marlene reached into the envelope again and pulled out 2 smaller slips. They were not receipts. They were my notes, written on torn cafeteria memo paper. She laid them flat on the desk. Ellen read the first one out loud, barely above a whisper. No names, just tokens. Her eyes moved to the second slip. No parents, no stories, just lunch. I felt Lily's hand slide into mine. I had forgotten she was still beside me until her fingers curled around my thumb. Ellen did not turn around this time. She kept looking at the notes. Marlene, she said, why would Dad write that? Because he knew how fast help can turn into talk, Marlene said. I looked down at the floor. The old scuff mark near the serving window was still there. Some marks stayed, no matter how much you scrubbed. Marlene continued, careful and calm. He asked me not to tell children, not to tell parents, not to tell PETA volunteers, not even to make a little sign thanking him. Ellen closed her eyes for a second. I could see her remembering the way she had picked up the jar, the way she had laughed like it was junk, the way she had looked at the other parents before she looked at me. So nobody knew? She asked. I knew, Marlene said. Mester, Hanley knew the buffer existed. That was enough. Ellen finally turned toward me. Dad, you let people think you were just hanging around. I met her eyes. That was easier than making some child wonder if everyone was watching. She did not answer. Outside the office, Paula called Ellen's name again, but this time Ellen did not even flinch. She looked back at Marlene. Why didn't he ever tell his own family? Marlene folded the notes and slid them back into the envelope. Because then, she said, it would have become about him. Marlene put the envelope back in the drawer, but she did not close it. Her fingers paused beside the black notebook, and for the first time all morning, I saw her hesitate. Ellen noticed too. What? Marlene looked at me, not at Ellen. Marty, there's one thing in here I never showed you that made my chest tighten. I stepped closer to the office door, but I did not go inside. Some lines still mattered, even when they were drawn on old cafeteria tile. Marlene opened the notebook again and lifted the back cover. A small folded paper was tucked behind it, yellowed at the edge, no bigger than a lunch receipt. Ellen's voice dropped. What is that? I found it last spring, Marlene said. No name, no grade, no account, nothing private. She unfolded it and laid it on the desk between them. Ellen leaned over the paper. I watched her face as she read it, because I could not bring myself to look at the note first. Her eyes filled, but she did not cry. She just went still. What does it say? Lily asked beside me. Marlene turned the paper slightly, and now I could see the handwriting. Careful letters, uneven in size, written with a dull pencil. Thank you for not saying my name. Nobody spoke. The cafeteria outside kept going. Parents laughed near the brownie table. Someone counted raffle tickets. A chair scraped. Normal sounds, ordinary sounds, moving around a sentence that had just changed the room. Ellen touched the edge of the note, but did not pick it up. They knew? Marlene shook her head. They knew someone had been kind. That's different. I swallowed hard. All those years, I had told myself the best kind of help left no fingerprints. But there it was anyway. Not a name, not a story. Just proof that being unseen had meant something. Ellen looked at me through the doorway. Dad! I lifted one hand slightly, enough to stop her before she tried to fix it with words. Don't, I said quietly. She closed her mouth. Marlene folded the note again with the same care she used around hot trays and sharp knives. Then she placed it back behind the notebook cover, where no parent at a fundraiser would ever find it by accident. Ellen looked toward the cafeteria, then toward Paula, then back at the locked drawer. For the first time, I saw her understand that the truth could not simply be announced. Ellen stood outside the cafeteria office with her hand still near the drawer, like she was afraid the note might disappear if she moved too far away. Paula Greer came back with a tight smile and a clipboard against her chest. Ellen, people are asking what's going on. Ellen looked at me first. Then she looked at Marlene. Nothing for the fundraiser, she said. Paula blinked. Then why is everyone standing around the office? Before Ellen could answer, Paul Hanley stepped through the side hallway, carrying a stack of paper cups. He had been assistant principal long enough to know when a cafeteria went quiet for the wrong reason. "Marlene," he said, "everything all right?" Marlene closed the drawer but did not lock it yet. Ellen had questions about the token jar. "Mister." Hanley's eyes moved from Marlene to me, then to Ellen. He set the cups on the counter. "That system is allowed," he said carefully. "Marlene manages it. I'm aware of it." Paula's eyebrows rose. "System?" Mr. Hanley turned toward her with the same calm voice he used at assemblies. "Cafeteria procedure, Paula, not a pita matter." That was the first time all morning I saw Paula run out of words. Ellen folded her arms, but not in anger. More like she was holding herself together. "So it was supervised?" "Yes, Mr. Hanley said. "And private. That part matters most." He looked at her long enough for the meaning to land. No names, no stories, no making an example out of anyone. Ellen nodded, but her eyes were wet now. I made him look like he was in the way. Nobody answered. There was no need to. The cafeteria behind us was still bright with fundraiser noise. Parents bought cookies. Children passed through with adults, laughing about raffle prizes and cupcakes, unaware of the old jar locked a few feet away. That was how it should be. Ellen looked at the crowd, then at me. I could see the apology rising in her face before she said it. The big kind. The kind people make when they need everyone to hear they have changed. I shook my head once. She stopped. Marlene saw it too. Some things don't get repaired with a microphone. Mr. Hanley picked up the paper cups again. Especially not this. Ellen swallowed hard. "Then what am I supposed to do?" I did not answer her. Not because I wanted her to suffer. Because for once, she had to think past embarrassment, past appearances, past what people would say. She looked back toward the cafeteria table where the PI cash box still sat open, right where she had almost emptied the jar. And I watched my daughter understand that the truth could not be announced without breaking what it had protected. Ellen did not say anything dramatic. She walked back to the pite table, closed the cash box, and moved it to Paula's side without looking for permission. Then she turned toward Marlene. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. Marlene studied her for 1 second. "First, stop treating the cafeteria like rented space." Ellen nodded once, and to her credit, she did not defend herself. Paula stood by the raffle tickets, waiting for Ellen to explain everything in a way that made the morning feel normal again. Ellen only said, "Paula, the jar stays with Marlene." Paula opened her mouth, then glanced at Mr. Hanley and shut it. Marlene unlocked the drawer and lifted the lunch token jar out with both hands. She did not put it back on the pita table. She set it on the small counter beside the serving window, where cafeteria things belonged. Ellen followed her there. I stayed near the wall with Lily, watching my daughter stand on the other side of a place she had never really looked at before. She had eaten in this cafeteria as a girl. She had visited school events as a mother, but she had never stood behind the counter while Marlene showed her how quiet work gets done. "Hands first," Marlene said. Ellen washed her hands at the stainless sink. "Now trays," Marlene said. "Stack them straight, not pretty. Straight matters." Ellen stacked trays. "Napkins go here. Extra cups behind the milk cooler." If someone asks a question you don't know how to answer, you send them to me. Ellen nodded through all of it. The fundraiser kept moving, but something had shifted. Ellen was no longer at the front table trying to look in charge. She was behind the serving window, sleeves pushed up, doing small jobs nobody clapped for. Lily whispered, "Mom looks nervous." "She should," I said. Then I added, "Because it was true, but she's still there." Marlene handed Ellen a few wooden tokens from the jar. "You don't wave these around. You don't ask who they're for. You don't make a face when one is used. You keep the line moving." Ellen closed her fingers around the tokens carefully. For the first time all morning, She looked at them like they were not junk. Later, when the last raffle ticket had been sold and the cafeteria tables were being wiped down, Ellen came over to me. Her hair had come loose near her face. There was a damp spot on one sleeve from the sink. She did not apologize in front of Paula. She did not ask Lily to listen. She did not make Marlene witness it. She just stood beside me and looked at the jar. "Dad," she said quietly, "how do you refill it without making anyone feel watched?" The next Tuesday morning, I came back to the cafeteria before the first lunch period. I did not come in through the front office like a visitor. Marlene let me through the side door by the kitchen, the same one that still stuck a little when the weather turned damp. The cafeteria smelled like warm rolls and floor cleaner. Trays were stacked straight beside the serving window. Napkins sat where they belonged, not pretty, just right. Then I saw the jar. It was back on the small counter beside Marlene's station, away from the pita tables, away from the cash boxes, away from people who might mistake it for spare change. The faded ribbon was still there, but the old yellow tape had been replaced with a simple label: Quiet Lunch Tokens. I stood there longer than I meant to. Marlene did not say anything. She just kept opening milk cartons and setting them into the cooler. Behind the counter, Ellen was wiping down the tray rail with a blue cloth. Her hair was pulled back, and she had a volunteer badge clipped to her sweater. She looked nervous, but she did not look embarrassed. That mattered. She saw me and stopped wiping. "Morning, Dad. Morning." For a second, neither of us moved. Then she held up the cloth. "Marlene said I missed a spot." "You did," Marlene said without turning around. Ellen wiped it again. I almost smiled. Lily came in behind her carrying a small stack of napkins. She set them down carefully, then looked at me like she was waiting to see if the room felt safe again. I gave her a nod. Ellen walked to the jar and touched the lid, not lifting it, just resting 2 fingers on the glass. "I'm not going to get this right all at once," she said. "No," I said. "You won't." She nodded like she deserved that. "But you came back," I said. Her eyes lowered. I should have asked before I touched it. I looked at the jar instead of answering too fast. Forgiveness was not a switch. It was more like a floor you kept cleaning because people kept walking across it. From my coat pocket, I took one small wooden token. I had sanded it at my kitchen table the night before and painted one side with a blue dot. Ellen held out her hand. I placed it in her palm. "You don't look around when you drop it in," she nodded. "You don't wait to see who needs it." "I know. And you don't make kindness heavy." Her fingers closed around the token. "I'm learning." She turned, lifted the lid just enough, and let the token fall. It made one soft sound against the others.